Hello, people of the interwebs. This is my walkaway video. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to join the walkaway contest. I haven't made up my mind yet. I would need to purchase an account on Walkaway Social and an account or a premium account on X in order to post the video in both of those places. And I don't know. I guess that wouldn't be too hard to do, but I'm doing a test one, and we'll see how this one goes, and then maybe I'll do another one, and that'll be the one that I post there to the socials. But anyways, so I guess for me, the walk away thing started before walking away was a thing. I was a default liberal, and I had like a very superficial understanding of politics to begin with, but I definitely thought I knew what the fuck I was talking about. I thought it was very obvious and very easy to sort of judge people and know what their beliefs meant. Like, if you're a conservative and you dress in you think it's important to wear a suit to church, and like you get upset over too much partying and drinking and things like that, then you're like this I guess contemptible type of person, really, is what I looked at it as. Like, I thought I don't know, I thought in large part that everyone that was like that was just a liar, and that they didn't actually believe in morality or the principles that they claimed to believe in, and they used those things as ways to hide their own improprieties. Like, I didn't think anyone was serious about anything, really, and that. Now, I mean, I really understand what confession through projection means, because I'm the one who is not a serious person, but that's a different story. Anyways, well, I mean, then I would like to think I'm more of a serious person now, but I definitely wasn't then. But anyways, so it was very easy to default away from conservatism and into liberalism. I liked skateboarding. I smoked pot. I'm from California. I listened to underground hip hop. Like, I didn't identify with any of the aspects of, I guess, what people would say my conditioning should have been. Like, I should have been more into church, and I should have been more into I don't know, I guess conservative type thinking, like conservative principles, I guess. And I was more of like rebellious, like I was trying to reject all of that stuff. So I went off the deep end in a lot of ways, and I had a lot of insecurities, especially because, like, for example, like I was confused about my sexuality, and that really fucked with me, because I had this idea of God's plan in my head, and my parents were Christians, and so I thought that God's plan for me must be good because my family was good, and my dad is a Sunday school teacher, my mom works at the hospital, and both my parents get compliments from everyone in their community, about what great people they are. And so I thought it was obvious that my life was supposed to be good. And when I wound up realizing that it was like a problem, that I like felt attracted, towards other boys or whatever. I was really little, like literally like kindergarten, first time I realized I had a crush on a boy. And so that really fucked with me, because I thought, like, why would God's plan for me be this? And so that was sort of at a very young age, like literally from, as like I said, like kindergarten, first grade, I was starting to have these like two alternate identities of, like, the one identity that was the good Christian boy, and then the other one that was like the real me. Like, and I don't even know if it was the real me, but it was fair to say that there was other aspects of myself that were like causing me to dissociate from what I was being raised in, I guess, and starting at a young age. And so for even though I did have the conditioning implanted, I guess, in my mind of Christian morality and sort of the conservative ethic, work ethic, and things like that. I personally didn't try to adopt or embody those things. If anything, I was rejecting those things, and so naturally, on like a deep level, I gravitated towards left wing politics, really, and I didn't really, like I said, it was all very superficial. It was it was that I saw the left as rejecting sort of the conservative mold, and it wasn't even nearly as progressive at that time. In the late '90s and early 2000s, when I would have been, starting to think a little bit more advanced, and yeah, I didn't even think about it until literally the 2016 election, and so I was a Bernie Sanders supporter going into it, and I was thinking I had all these great ideas about socialism, and if it were me, like, well, I guess, yeah, I guess we're still on track here. I don't need to change my order here, but anyways, like I was having all these thoughts of like, if it were me, I would have all these programs where we would incentivize people to eat healthy, and get exercise and do all these other things, and that would be like how we would solve so many of these problems, so many mental health problems and physical health conditions, and I still believe that is probably the answer, but I just realized, I was like, well, what about for the people that don't want to do that, or they're not ready to do that yet. They haven't got there yet. Who am I to force them or to put them at a huge disadvantage by like offering tax credits or whatever other kind of, Orwellian idea you could come up with to use for social engineering. And once I realized that regardless of how altruistic I was trying to be in my social planning, that at the end of the day, I would have to use force and authoritarianism. That I actually didn't agree with that. I didn't agree with using the government in order to achieve, like, the ends didn't . justify the means, I guess, And I believe that people's freedom and their ability to make their own choices without being put at a disadvantage by a system or a government is the foundation of a free society. And so yeah, I realized I didn't support all that, and that it couldn't be achieved without authoritarianism. And so I was less into socialism and the leftism, but I hadn't really become a Trump supporter yet. And I think I voted like either Green Party or Libertarian that year. I think Jill Stein maybe was Green Party or something like that, and I don't know. I forget who the Libertarian. I think I might have voted for Jill Stein. I don't know. I thought I was being extra smart by not voting for a Democrat or a Republican, but also I had felt that Bernie Sanders had the nomination stolen from him, so that was another big thing. Is I was like, okay, well, the Republicans are supposed to be the shady ones, but meanwhile, Trump was not the establishment pick, and they still allowed him to get voted in. Yet, when push come to shove, the DNC put Hillary in when Bernie Sanders was the clear favorite. So, I felt they had stolen, the primary nomination from Bernie, and that was another big reason of why I ultimately chose to vote for a different party. Is I didn't support Hillary. I supported Bernie for sure, but I thought Hillary represented I had been a conspiracy theorist for a long time, and so to me, Hillary represented like deep state corruption. Um, and so, and prior to that, I think the first time I voted for Barack Obama, his first time, and then I'm not sure if I voted the second time, but either way, so the biggest thing really, I guess, that caused me to walk away is that I I went through a lot. Like I said, I was confused about my sexuality, and I was super insecure about my body because I was uncircumcised, and I told my mom that when I was in like 8th grade, and ended up getting circumcised in 8th grade, and that ended up being like a symbol of self-hate or something. I had an acid trip in Mammoth Lakes, and the I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I realized what I had done the first time. I was loving who I was seeing for like the first time in my life. I was able to love who I saw, and when I got down to the scar at the circumcision, I realized that I had done that in this to try and like escape self-hate, and I realized, and I didn't understand why I could ever hate myself that much. And it was like it was a really hard moment. And um, so I had been through drug addiction starting at 13 that lasted until I was 30, and I had the body dysmorphia and surgery, and I will call it that because I didn't think I was an acceptable man. Like I thought girls would laugh at me, and that I could never be like a hot guy or something if I wasn't like circumcised. And so I it was like a pretty big issue for me, and I know there's a lot of guys that are embarrassed about it when they're young, that deal with that. And so, and I know that I'm not the only guy either that's ever regretted doing that. So that's kind of like kind of a big thing. And sorry, I hope that wasn't fucking oops. It's kind of a big thing because when you consider everything that's going on today, I don't know, I was like a generation too old, luckily, because I think I would have been a prime candidate for a lot of the manipulation and bullshit that insecure young boys go through today. So it was there was a lot going on in my life that led up to me wanting to be sober and wanting to put myself together. And I didn't have any influences really, but because I had come to that conclusion about socialism, and when I was thinking about that, I was like, well, how long are you going to wait for the government to deliver, this dream of yours that's going to allow you to just fix yourself? And what are they even going to be able to give you that's going to help you fix yourself? And so I realized, I was like, I can't endorse some authoritarian wet dream based on the fantasy that I'm going to fix my life if only the government is a certain way. Like how fucking absurd. And I realized that I'm was the only one that could change the way I felt. Like the government could never change the way I felt. Having things couldn't change the way I felt. Like that, getting a certain amount of stuff was never gonna fix the way I felt or teach me how to think. And so I realized that it was my responsibility to figure all that out, and I did. But that was much easier said than done. Like it took a long time. It took years. But in that time, right when I had been realizing that, I was during that election cycle, and as those other thoughts about socialism and everything were going down, and I started saying, I think personal responsibility is the answer to my friends on the internet, and they basically all said, of course you would say that, you're a privileged white male. And so they didn't ask me about how I came to believe that, like what I had been through, if I had any reason to think like what, like they didn't ask me anything. They just immediately maligned me with, I guess, right wing conservative because I suggested the idea of personal responsibility. And at this time, I still didn't even know anything about it. I just understood that that was the answer because I had gone so deep into the thinking other people could fix it for me that it made me realize that I was the only one that could fix it. But I didn't have any answers about that yet. And I thought at the time, I thought I was going to become like a master debater. No pun intended. That was funny though. But I really did. I thought I was going to be able to out debate like conservatives and liberals. And in the process of learning the conservative arguments, I flipped pretty much like 100% of my beliefs because I was honestly trying to understand and make my own better argument. And in the process of actually honestly trying to understand for the first time, I I guess I realized that the conservative arguments weren't based on a bunch of sourpusses that were trying to manipulate the world into thinking they were better people than they actually were. Quite ironically, that's maybe more so what the left was doing. But so the first video I saw was like Larry Elder on Dave Rubin, and that one I would like scream and turn off and then remind myself like, okay, the whole point of listening to this is to actually hear his arguments, because that's what I had realized when I finally started being self-critical. I was like, wow, I'm so like, I kept saying I'm obnoxious, understudied, over opinionated, and rude. Like that was the catchphrase that I like came up with or whatever for myself. And so I was really trying my hardest to not be that anymore and come up with a better way of operating. And that finding Dave Rubin's channel and Larry Elder interview eventually led me to Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson then filled in all the gaps I needed filled in. I listened to like all of his lectures regarding maps of meaning, personality and its transformations, and the psychological significance of the Bible stories. Those are like 3 of his different college lecture series. And also there was other people like Carl Benjamin or Sargon of Akkad, Stefan Molyneux. I'm not sure, really the whole intellectual dark web, including people like Sam Harris and Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein and any of the other more liberal people. Like I've been open to listening to liberals as well throughout this time, but I found that time and time again that even the most intelligent liberals were making the worst arguments, and sometimes not even making arguments. And that isn't to say that there was never any good argument that needed to be addressed or that was valid, but time and time again it was like logic and rationale and principled thinking was always on the side of the conservatives much more than the liberals. And abortion, borders, law and order in general, the need to have police, that is, so many different things that I was just did not give a fuck about before, thought obviously were wrong because of the way that they were misused and abused. I understand now like why we would need them. And I don't know, I guess it seems so obvious to me now, like it seems almost stupid, really. And I would honestly like to have a situation where we can have both Republican and Democrat candidates be worth listening to and be like serious people, like erudite philosophers, I mean, I'll be voting for Trump, but I'm honestly like, if you people compare him to Reagan a lot, and if you listen to a Reagan speech compared to a Trump speech, it's like this is not a fair, this is an insult to Reagan, honestly. I mean, that isn't to say that Trump isn't a smart guy that's getting shit done, but Reagan was just such an eloquent speaker, and Trump is just so hard sometimes. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm a fan. Like, I'm voting for him. I hope that he saves our country. But I also hope that in the future that we could have, people like Reagan, like JFK, like Dwight Eisenhower, um, like Theodore Roosevelt, um, and I know there's other presidents that are maybe more worth naming than the ones I did, but those are the guys mostly that have speeches that I quote. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's a lot to be said about the difference between victim mentality and personal responsibility. And at the end of the day, as someone who's 5 years sober after 17 years of drug and alcohol abuse, who struggled with sexuality and body dysmorphia resulting in the surgery, who already for a very long time hated America, hated the West, thought, for the most part that all the conspiracy videos about American imperialism and false flag operations painted like an unassailable story about what America really was. And I think there probably is a lot of truth to that stuff, but I think there's also a lot of truth to what America actually is, and it's not any of that. America is principles. It's an idea. It is the idea that each one of us have the divine spark of God within us. We're all made in His image, and we're all a fragment of His greatness. And together, by being the type of people that are self-governing, that we can build the city on a hill, for lack of a better way of putting it. Really, I mean, you need, in a moral society, what I should say is, to have a free society, you need a moral society. And the classically liberal principles, with constraint, I mean, Sargon and the Lotus Eaters, they've been talking about how liberalism, taken to its logical full extent, is the current progressive left, which I actually agree with. But certainly the idea of individual sovereignty being the most paramount principle, and that in order to be an individual sovereign, you have to be capable of self-governance, and that in order to self-govern, you need to be a moral individual, and you need to be a capitalist, meaning you have the right to own your own property, and you need to have, and this is part of morality, but you need to have, and capitalism, but you need to have a work ethic that places an emphasis on creating value, not on extracting wealth from systems. And so a lot of the complaints that people have about capitalism are actually complaints about moral decay and lack of ethics. And it's true. I mean, I guess if people are incapable of being moral, then we can't have a free society. Authoritarianism will be necessary, but I have conviction in the belief that people can be free. And that if we were better at teaching the principles and showing people how it isn't about an unfair judge or sky daddy, um, so much as it's about controlling yourself and enabling yourself to be a better person, to do the things that you actually want to get done, and to be the type of person that can be a member of a functional society. Because that's one thing that people don't understand. It's like, well, how do you actually achieve the socialist dream, right? It's like the socialist dream is that there's no need for a government, right? There's no need for an authority figure delegating work or regulating anything. Well, how do you achieve that? Well, you need every individual within that collective to be a moral individual who is capable of generating enough value for themselves and their family, and maybe at least a couple people in their community. And if you have people that are motivated to do that day in and day out, every single day for their entire life, then you can have you can approach some kind of free utopian society. But that's achieved again through free individuals and capitalism. That is a moral society choosing to do it. It can't be achieved through authoritarianism and through some stated goal by the collective. Like, people don't self-organize based on the whims and needs of a collective. They self-organize based on the needs of their families and their communities. And that is why, no matter what, whenever you have these socialist and communist regimes, they always end in bloodshed, is because the state is not capable of caring for every individual's needs. And there always ends up being people who are living with shortages and who are destitute, who aren't able to provide the goods that people need, or people who aren't able to receive the services that they need because of the state's grip on and control on the markets and on the regulatory systems and everything. So it is not through a socialist collective that you would achieve something like that. It is through a capitalist model where every individual, through their own recognizance, is motivated for their own reasons, through their own heart and their own mind, to participate in something like that. And that is the message of Jesus Christ, and that is the message of liberalism, really. I mean, that is what I think is so funny about all this. Is the most radical idea ever is the idea that you could be capable of self-governance, and that no one is above you. No, there's no authority figure above you other than God. And it is the liberal ideal, and it is the Christian ideal. And I don't know, the idea that the state would come before your own sovereignty and your own relationship with God, who is not a man in the cloud, anthropomorphized in my opinion, but the Bible says he's unknowable and ineffable. So the God beyond all gods. You have the gods made up by men, which are God, the words that we can understand. And then you have the one true God, and that is the God who cannot be contained in human language. And it doesn't even really matter if you believe in that or not, I guess, but all the principles flow from that source, from that theological tradition and philosophical tradition in the West. And I recognize that now, and so that's why I walked away. Anyways, I hope this has been good for someone, and please leave some notes for me in the comments if you're watching this and you think I should make a walkaway video for Brandon Straka's walkaway contest. All right. Cheers, everyone.